All right, so you had a chance to take a look at the video on more to do with the siege on Boston, and then the British and the New York campaign, and how Washington was able to evade um, Washington. A lot of it had to do also, guys. We haven't talked about this, is the ineptitude of the British generals. Right? There were so many times throughout this war that if a British general had just had made sort of what looked to be the probable move, right? They would have been able to get Washington, but for one reason or another, they kept making these missteps. Now, part of that's Monday morning quarterbacking too, right? But there is a lot to be said about the ineptitude of the British generals as well, as far as not being able to capture Washington, especially early on. The longer it gets, the more difficult it is, right? So if they could have got them in New York, that could have gone a long way, obviously, in ending it quickly, but it doesn't. Okay, and so now Washington, who's sort of been kicked and beaten across Manhattan, down into New Jersey, and now he's in a desperate situation, right? Because he's on the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River. He understands that it's December, and that with the new year comes the enlistments of these Continental soldiers, a number of them coming up, so they're free to go home. And a lot of them who are destitute, in rags, are not eager to stay on. So Washington knows he needs some sort of a victory here, right? And so he knows that there is a Hessian detachment. The main army of the British side has stopped in New York and are wintering in New York in very comfortable accommodations, right? Part of the reason why William Howe doesn't continue to come after Washington is that he apparently has a love interest in New York, and why not be warm and cozy with your sweetheart rather than in the freezing cold trying to chase after George Washington, right? So plenty of time for that when the weather breaks. That was sort of the way that the war was fought in this time period. You would have these long periods of inactivity while they waited for the weather to break, right? And so Washington makes this brazen attempt to cross the Delaware under the cover of darkness, and then attack the Hessians, and then move on and attack a rear guard of the British Army in Princeton, and come back and do another attack on Trenton, second Trenton, right? So here's what I'm going to have you guys do. And hopefully this will be fun for you guys, right? So what I'm going to have you guys do now is I'm going to have you guys, I'm going to put a link to this, right? So don't worry about this, but we're going to play a little bit of a game, right? It's an interactive game, and it's a game that's designed for you to sort of take on the role of George Washington. Okay, so the link that I have will take you into this page here, where it says, "Step into the boots of George Washington as you confront the very challenges that he faced during the Revolutionary War and as our first president." You're going to click on single player, okay? And then these are the different scenarios that you can choose. Now, what's interesting about this is the interactive game that's in the museum at Mount Vernon. And it's in this really cool room with this big movie screen. And so essentially what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to 1777 Battle of Second Trenton. You're going to click on that. Christopher Jackson, the actor who played Washington in Broadway's Hamilton, will give you sort of a video introduction of what you're going to be doing. And then essentially what's going to happen is you're going to have the chance to hear from different participants of this time period about what you should do to answer the question that will be posed for you, right? And then you'll be able to say, I strongly agree or strongly disagree. And then at the end, you're going to have to choose what you should do as Washington. And then you'll find out what Washington did, and you'll see how they compare. So it's really kind of a cool thing. And this will walk you through everything, so it'll be much clearer. So what I want you to do now is to go ahead and take a moment to play the game. Should be about 10, 12 minutes or so. And then come back. We'll talk a little bit about what happens after this, and then go from there. All right? So let me go ahead and stop the record, and then have fun playing Be Washington, one of my favorite games.